Hello, everyone. Okay, here's just a little overview about what you can expect in each week. So, of course, you've read the home page. We're going to click over here on modules, and you're already working your way through the syllabus. And then here are our course documents, which they're going to be referred to. Here you'll find out a little bit more about them in a minute. But what this video is for is just to help you understand what's going to be the requirements each week. So you're going to have one module for each week. And in that module, you're going to have, first of all, a textbook chapter assignment. Now the textbook, and I'm going to say this repeatedly throughout the videos, I'm going to keep reminding you that the textbook A is fabulous. You're going to learn a lot from the textbook. You definitely want to read it. But B, you don't want to read it until after you've watched the podcast that's associated with those chapters. You want to watch the podcast first, get an understanding, because the textbook can get really in depth on some of the subjects. So you want to watch the podcast first, which I'm going to explain here in a minute, and then read your chapters. And also keep in mind that I will never test you on anything that we haven't talked about in class. In the podcast, we've reviewed in the textbook. So there's not going to be any surprises specifically from the textbook that we haven't previously already covered. So again, I want to encourage you, definitely read your textbook, but don't get overwhelmed by it. Okay? So each module or each week, here's your textbook reading. Then you're going to have a podcast. So if you click on that podcast, see if it'll do it. Here we go. It'll bring you to a page. Read if there's a little blurb here first. And notice in this little blurb before you hit play on the podcast, as we're reading this, hello everyone, welcome to your first podcast. Please be sure that you print the worksheet, which is your homework. All will be explained in this video, and have it ready to complete while you are watching the podcast. Okay, so what this is saying again is that you are going to, let me go back. Notice here when we go to our modules and we're in our week 1 module, here's the podcast that we're going to watch. But before you start watching the podcast, you want to click the next link, which is your homework worksheet. Okay, for that module. You're going to click on it, open it up, and here is that worksheet. Okay, you can print it and write down the answers in it. You can keep it on your computer and type the answers in, whatever you prefer. I personally like to handwrite them, but you're going to realize most people find these very, very helpful because you're going to fill in the answers as we go along. It's going to keep you focused listening to the podcast. It's going to help you decide what the most important information is. Keep you focused on the most important information. And then it will also provide a study guide for you as you're going along. You're going to have study materials. And then you can use these worksheets when you're taking the quizzes. So you should be able to find your answers here in these worksheets as you're taking the quizzes. Okay, so let me close out of that here and go back to the module. So once you've got the worksheet open and ready to go, you're going to click on the podcast. You're going to click play.
Well, hello there,
There I
Foothill
am.
College apprenticeship
Dual
students.
Mrs. Randolph.
Welcome
That's
to
kind of ugly.
dental radiology.
And while you're watching it, fill in that worksheet. Okay. And then after you've watched the podcast, you've filled in the worksheet, then there's going to be a quiz associated with that podcast. Okay. Now, keep in mind that your homework is due, and I haven't updated this yet. I need to do that here still, but your homework is due every Thursday night after our meeting. So we're going to meet together every Thursday night from 7 to 8 o'clock. Your first meeting on January 12th is mandatory. After that, they are optional, but I highly encourage you to join me. You can answer questions. This is a perfect time for you to be sure that you're completely understanding the information that's been covered in the week's session. And then when we're done talking, you can upload your homework because it's due by midnight on those Thursday nights. And then your quiz, you'll have a couple days to be able to study. Your quiz will be due by Sunday night of that week. And then you're going to start preparing and watching the next podcast, because remember, this is a flipped classroom. So you're going to need to do this week one's assignments prior to our meeting on January 12th. So here is our weekly Zoom meeting link. It will be at the bottom of every week, every module. So you can click on the link, meet me at 7 o'clock every Thursday night to cover that week's information. Hopefully this has been helpful. Again, at any time you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Email is the best way. Talk to you soon.